President Donald Trump was greeted with loud cheers and an honorary law degree at Liberty University's commencement ceremony Saturday. He urged the 7,000 graduates at America's largest Christian college to take risks and shake up the status quo, as he says he is trying to do.
I've seen firsthand how the system is broken. A small group of failed voices want to tell everybody else how to live and what to do and how to think. But you aren't going to let other people tell you what you believe, especially when you know that you're right.
Evangelical Christians helped sweep President Trump into the White House. And while his overall approval ratings have fallen below 40%, more than 3/4 of evangelicals recently surveyed said the president is doing a good job. Their reasons include his support of Israel, his recent appointment of conservative Justice Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court, and his ongoing support of churches exercising free speech.
No one is ever going to stop you from practicing your faith or from preaching what's in your heart. We will always stand up for the right of all Americans to pray to God and to follow his teachings.
Most new U.S. presidents deliver their first commencement address at the University of Notre Dame in Indiana, Catholic University. But student dissent prompted the president to change those plans and come to a university that is obviously a lot more welcoming.
He is committed to making America a better place for all, and not just for those who have specific goals or sets of ideas about how everyone should behave, but letting everyone choose and live the way our founders intended.
What he's done so far has been, in my opinion, pretty good. I think it's good.
Still, some graduates say they do have reservations about the president.
I do not agree with everything that he has said or every policy that he has chosen to implement, but I certainly support the notion of him being my president.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
President Trump thanked this crowd of evangelical Christians for helping him win the White House, and he may need their steadfast support as he continues to encounter challenges to his policies in Washington.
Chinese President Xi Jinping has called for free trade and an open world economy during a key trade event in Beijing. Xi made the comment at the opening of the Belt and Road Summit, a Chinese initiative aimed at reviving the ancient trade route known as the Silk Road. Xi added that Beijing is ready to spend $124 billion on the plan. He said everyone is welcome to join what he said is the road to future peace and development of the world. Meanwhile, at the summit, Russian President Vladimir Putin called for an end to protectionism, saying it is a threat to global economy.
It is apparent that the global economic and technological space risks being fragmented. Protectionism is becoming the new normal, whereas its latent manifestation take the form of illegal sanctions, including the restrictions on the spread and supply of technologies. The idea of openness and free trade are increasingly rejected, very often by those who recently served as exponents of these ideas.
Leaders and delegates from 29 countries, including Spain and Italy and Iran, are attending the summit. The Silk Road Economic Belt is a massive infrastructure project connecting Asia, Europe and Africa via a complex network of ports and trade hubs.
Chinese President Xi Jinping met with his Turkish counterpart Recep Tayyip Erdogan on Saturday. President Xi expressed his appreciation for Turkey's support of the Belt and Road Initiative, and Erdogan said Turkey is willing to enhance cooperation within the framework of the initiative. President Xi and Prime Minister of Hungary Viktor Orban agreed to upgrade ties to a comprehensive strategic partnership and highlighted further areas of cooperation to benefit both countries. In talks with Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras, Xi suggested the southeastern Greek port of Piraeus could be expanded to act as a transfer hub for the China-Europe Land Sea Express in the Mediterranean area. Tsipras praised the benefits the Belt and Road Initiative has brought to Greece and said he was looking forward to further cooperation in infrastructure, energy and telecommunications.
Having handed the keys of the Élysée Palace to his successor, Emmanuel Macron, former President François Hollande headed straight for the headquarters of the French Socialist Party. Hollande's plans for his post-presidential life remain unclear, but he's not completely turned his back on politics. I wanted to come back here because without you, without this movement, without the strength you embody, I would never have led France. I'm leaving the country in a much better state than I found it in. The 62-year-old has not announced his retirement from political life. A new suite of offices is being set up in the Rue de Rivoli in Paris, which Hollande will occupy after a few days of holiday in France.
Emmanuel Macron laid out his plans for France on Sunday after becoming the country's youngest leader since Napoleon. In his inauguration speech, Macron promised to combat authoritarianism, terrorism, climate change, and the, quote, excesses of capitalism in the world. He pledged to find a solution to the global migrant crisis and called for a more efficient, more democratic European Union. As part of the official exchange of power, outgoing President François Hollande gave Macron the launch codes for France's 300 nuclear warheads. France will become the only EU member with nuclear weapons once Brexit is complete. Macron's self-founded party doesn't hold any seats in the French National Assembly. With those elections in June, Macron has pledged to have a candidate for all 577 of France's legislative seats. More than 400 candidates have already been announced.
A decent deal out of Brexit is likely to be at the front of many British voters' minds when they go to the polls in a few weeks. And across the English Channel, France's next president is wasting no time explaining how tough he's going to be.
What the UK is experiencing is precisely the fact that Brexit is not a walk in the park.
If your government decides to organise a Brexit, I will be pretty tough on it.
A new French president was elected. He was elected with a strong mandate. The UK, we need to ensure we've got an equally strong mandate and an equally strong negotiating position.
One of Emmanuel Macron's key campaign promises was to renegotiate the current border agreement with Britain, but Theresa May insists it works well for both countries. The treaty places Britain's border at the French port of Calais. That allows UK authorities to make security checks on French soil, leaving France effectively responsible for illegal migrants. Now, Britain pays around €80 million a year for enhanced security there, and it's not keen to bring the border any closer to home.
Now, the British Foreign Secretary says the European Union might have to pay Britain for leaving the bloc instead of the other way around. Now, Boris Johnson says that Britain has contributed greatly to the assets that it shares with the EU. He says the EU is trying to squeeze his country dry with the Brexit bill. Former London mayor threatened that Britain could simply walk away from the negotiations, saying no deal was better than a bad deal. London's financial commitments when it was an EU member were among the most difficult of Brexit issues that need to be negotiated. EU officials insist that Britain should settle its financial liabilities for Brexit. A divorce bill could cost Britain up to €100 billion.
It's Germany's most populous state, and for a moment on Sunday perhaps its most important. Election fever has come to North Rhine-Westphalia. The Social Democrats have governed here for almost all of the last 50 years. Now they face a real fight from the resurgent Christian Democrats.
What matters on Sunday is that this state continues to be led by a woman who stands for justice, respect, social solidarity and for Europe. For years, Hannelore Kraft fought together with me for an idea that I want to recall again today. With us, with Hannelore and with me as future Chancellor, one thing will simply not happen. That's an anti-European atmosphere in Germany.
A few months ago, Mr. Schulz was the darling of the opinion polls. Now he trails Angela Merkel in popularity and has presided over 2 successive state election defeats. So, have the Social Democrats run out of steam?
Ja, der Schulz ist schon etwas mehr.
Schulz was a breath of fresh air for the SPD campaign, but the Schulz effect and his recent drop-off doesn't fully explain the situation. It's much more that Merkel has regained control as Chancellor following the refugee crisis last year.
She is taking nothing for granted. Campaigning in Aachen on Saturday, she seemed almost to be in general election mode.
On Sunday, you can decide with who and with which programme you believe your life will be better. This is what the decision is about, and therefore my sincere plea to you, go to the polls on Sunday.
In every state election in Germany so far this year, Angela Merkel's Christian Democrats have triumphed. But a win here on Sunday would be the biggest triumph so far this year, and it would be a bitter blow to the ruling Social Democrats.
With days to go until Iran's presidential election, frontrunner and incumbent Hassan Rouhani painted his rivals as power-hungry puppets of the security forces. Rouhani, a moderate cleric, took office 4 years ago in a landslide victory. His landmark policy has been the reduction of sanctions against Iran via rolling back on the country's nuclear program. We will not let Iran become isolated once again. We would like to have constructive and effective interaction with the world. Rouhani's criticism of his opponents goes beyond the usual boundaries of Iranian politics. Ebrahim Rezi, a hardliner, is Rouhani's main rival. He is favoured to succeed the country's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. Another challenger is Mohammad Bakr Kalibaf, the conservative mayor of Tehran, who lost to Rouhani in 2013.
In Nepal, an army bomb disposal team has safely detonated 2 explosive devices near the capital, Kathmandu. They'd been planted opposite a candidate's house as Nepal votes for representatives in municipal and village council elections for the first time in decades. Aside from the incident, the first phase of voting has been peaceful.
Pyongyang launched a ballistic missile early Sunday morning. What's significant about this act is that it comes just a few days after the new South Korean president, with a friendlier approach to inter-Korean relations, is sworn into office. Hwang Ho-jun starts us off with a closer look into the regretful move from up north.
North Korea has carried out its first military provocation since the launch of the new administration in South Korea just 4 days ago. South Korea's military confirmed that the North launched a ballistic missile Sunday morning around 5:30 a.m. Seoul time from an area near the city of Kusong, about 120 kilometers northwest of the regime's capital. According to the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the missile flew some 700 kilometers, and judging by the flight distance, military experts are looking at the launch as a successful one. The Japanese government said the missile reached an altitude of more than 1,000 kilometers and landed in the East Sea after flying for about half an hour, but did not fall in Japan's exclusive economic zone. The exact type of missile it was is not yet clear, but the U.S. Pacific Command confirmed that the flight was not consistent with that of an intercontinental ballistic missile. This is the 7th missile provocation from Pyongyang this year alone, and comes just 2 weeks after a missile test that South Korean and U.S. officials said failed. Shortly after Sunday's launch, South Korea's National Security Council held an emergency meeting at 7 a.m., its first under the Moon Jae-in administration. It was led by the president himself for about 20 minutes, starting at 8, and they strongly condemned Pyongyang's action.
The president said the missile launch was a clear violation of the UN Security Council's resolutions and a grave threat to the peace and safety of the international community, let alone the Korean peninsula.
President Moon ordered the South Korean military to be on full readiness based on the steadfast alliance with the U.S. to deal with any military actions from the north, and to speed up the establishment of South Korea's own missile defense system called the Korea Air and Missile Defense, or KAMD. Regarding the possibility of dialogue with Pyongyang, which President Moon has said he is open to, he reiterated that a change in North Korea's attitude must come first.
In the past few minutes, the Russian President Vladimir Putin, who's currently on a visit to Beijing in China, has expressed concern about this. According to his spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, there is concern that's been expressed, I'm reading from the statement now, about the escalation of tension, including in connection with the launch of the missile from North Korea. That's the brief statement that's been issued by the Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov during a visit of Vladimir Putin to North Korea's main economic support and main ally, of course, China. Now, of course, this is an area where Russia has a long history of engaging in diplomacy to try and work out a solution, for instance, to the North Korean nuclear program. It was engaged in six-party talks that came to an end about a decade ago. And it's continually spoken to the United States and to Donald Trump, in fact, about the possibility and the need for the US and Russia to coordinate on this issue. And clearly, from this statement from the White House, it looks like Washington also sees, and the White House of President Trump also sees Russia as an ally on this issue, and that will be music to the Kremlin's ears, because this is a matter of big international global diplomacy. And Putin, the Russian president, loves the idea of being a deal maker, a key player in those big, key diplomatic problems in the world.
Now, the Syrian government has reached an evacuation deal with foreign-backed militants that are holed up in a Damascus neighborhood. Government military operations have been halted now in the Ghabun neighborhood of the capital. It's still unclear where the fires will go. Earlier, government forces had advanced in Ghabun, recapturing 80% of the area. Agreement comes after similar deals to evacuate the neighboring districts. On Friday, over 1,200 people left Barzeh and Tishreen for the northwestern province of Idlib. Damascus says the agreements are the best way to end the 6-year war.
To bring you, Osama bin Laden's son is out for revenge. The now 28-year-old Hamza bin Laden calling for lone wolf attacks against Americans and other enemies of al-Qaeda. The jihad is telling followers to, quote, prioritize Jewish and American targets. Hamza vowing to avenge his father's death. Of course, Navy SEALs killed the terror leader back in 2011.
Monday may see a resumption of the wave of cyber attacks around the world. That's the warning from computer experts as more and more companies and official bodies release details about how they've been compromised by the ransomware virus that locks them out of their own systems. Police and security forces have been overwhelmed by the scale of the attack.
Well, at Europol, you know, we are running around 200 global operations against cybercrime each year, but we've never seen anything like this. We've seen the rise of ransomware becoming the principal cyber threat, I think, but this is something we haven't seen before. The global reach is unprecedented.
How many countries now?
The latest count is over 200,000 victims in at least 150 countries.
Indonesia, which saw 2 Jakarta hospitals hit and dozens of other locations, called for high vigilance when the markets reopened. Each victim received a blackmail demand of between $300 to $600, whether or not that was an individual, giant multinational company or government department.
Now, the U.S. president says he plans to move quickly and nominate a new FBI director days after firing James Comey. President Donald Trump voiced hope that a decision will be made before he leaves for his first foreign trip later next week. Trump described his choices for the post as outstanding people. A U.S. administration official says 11 people are being considered to replace sacked FBI Director James Comey. 4 of them, including acting FBI Director Andrew McCabe, will be interviewed for the post on Saturday.
Alice Fisher was the first potential replacement for James Comey to interview at the Justice Department. She's no stranger to the place, having served there as head of the criminal division. The FBI has never had a female director. The current acting director, Andrew McCabe, arrived for his interview with security detail. McCabe was Comey's deputy for a little over a year, and he may have hurt his chances for promotion. He testified before a congressional committee that FBI agents had not lost confidence in Comey, contradicting one of the White House reasons for Comey's firing. Other candidates include a senator from Texas, John Cornyn, and Adam Lee, the head of the FBI office in Richmond, Virginia. President Trump made no mention of the controversy surrounding Comey's firing during a commencement speech at a university outside Washington. On his way there aboard Air Force One, he said he hopes to select a candidate by next Friday. Today, he starts his first overseas trip as president.
I think the process is going to go quickly because almost all of them are very well known. You know, they've been vetted over their lifetime, essentially. But very well known, highly respected, really talented people. And that's what we want for the FBI.
The person Trump selects will ultimately be responsible for the FBI's investigation into the possible collusion between the Trump presidential campaign and Russia. Trump acknowledged in an interview that the Russia investigation was on his mind when he decided to fire Comey.
The Democratic Republic of Congo is dealing with a new Ebola outbreak. News of the outbreak traveled slowly since it's in a remote region of the country. So far, there are 11 suspected cases, including 3 deaths. 1 case has been confirmed. The World Health Organization says it's working with local authorities to best combat the spread of the virus. The last Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo killed 49 people in 2014.
A new settlement with the Environmental Protection Agency is clearing the way for a controversial mining project. Under former President Barack Obama, the EPA ruled that a proposed gold and copper mine on Alaska's Bristol Bay could harm the local fishing trade and wildlife. It blocked the mine from breaking ground, citing the Clean Water Act. The company attempting to open the mine, the Pebble Limited Partnership, sued the EPA, saying the administration colluded to stymie the project. Now, the Trump administration's EPA has settled the case. Pebble can apply for an Army Corps of Engineers waiver so it can break ground ahead of another EPA evaluation. EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt said Pebble won't just automatically get the waiver, saying, quote, "The agreement will not guarantee or prejudge a particular outcome, but will provide Pebble a fair process for their permit application." Locals who are still concerned about the mine's impact plan to keep fighting. A representative for a group of Native Alaskans said, quote, "Anyone looking at this thinking that the opposition is going away, they're mistaken."
Well, Los Angeles is notorious for long and frustrating commutes. A new high-speed tunnel hopes to help fix that. A warning, though, the video posted on creator Elon Musk's Instagram page may cause motion sickness or even seizures. You may want to look away. So this you see here is a unique idea. These are electric sleds which would carry cars at speeds of up to 125 miles per hour from various locations throughout the city to LAX airport. This could cut time from traffic from upwards of 45 minutes down to just 5. And while there's no set day for when the project may be completed, his latest venture, named The Boring Company, has already begun digging its first tunnel, and I see why we had that warning earlier.